discussing about a concept of what makes for a good person and something of the conditions. How does that sound to you from your work in early childhood and as an educator?
I agree essentially about the fact that each of us has to have the possibility to become and maybe to be a good person. I'm convinced that when we are born, we have the possibility to be a good person if our family, our context, the community where we are able to support our possibility, our potentiality to be a good person. That means to develop the feeling of being part of the universe and in some way to discover our interdependency with the world. These are the processes that have to be guaranteed to each child, every girl, every boy, since the first moment of birth, to be recognized as a good person, competent in becoming a good person, offering context, life, mother, father, community, where this possibility can become reality, can become behavior and or better passion and compassion to the world and to the others. That's why schools and every other place have really to be able to support the qualities that can characterize a good person.
Deborah, when we were, before we began this session, we were talking, Your Holiness, about families and the changing shape of families. And you offered the view, Deborah, that you thought that society was perhaps going back to an older tradition within which communities took a more considered role in the care of a child who's growing into the context that I think Carla and that you spoke of too. I just want to mention that briefly as to what you're seeing in Australia around the growth of community engagement in children's lives.
I think that when we see now in some ways a destruction of a traditional family, the mother, the father and the children. What we see now in our early childhood settings in Australia, that we are seeking more of a partnership between the educator, the parent and the community. So there is a sense of a shared responsibility to ensure children's health and well-being. And perhaps we are moving back to a more past time when a community, we often say it takes a community to raise a child. And perhaps that shifted to being the responsibility of the parent. But now I think we're beginning to see that for children's health and well-being, we're seeing a shift so that it is now a partnership. The educator, the parents and the community together have a joint responsibility to ensure the well-being of that child.
Do you see communities, I mean you travel around the world, are you seeing now a similar pattern in which communities are becoming more actively engaged in the the business of growing good children?
I have been many different places, but then only the meeting with the public and talk. I am not able to study or research, so I don't know very detailed. But generally speaking, a modern society seems, I think, with modern technology, these things, excellent, very, very useful. But then, like child, I think, because of the more time spent with mechanic, or seeing or playing, then less time spent with their mother or loved one, isn't it? So that also, I think, and then the parent some work. So in the children put in some care, some children's what's the parent go some work. Then during that period, child put someone. Or child care center. So less human contact. So some expert told me, or have the view, the mother should spend more time with their children. Even child care place, person change as a duty, so in few weeks' time, change is very harmful. Some expert told me. Some conferences they told like that. So that even not real the family member, but who are taking care, even that, spend at least a few years, then child develop some kind of the closeness and trust and relying totally. If you a person like duty, few weeks, then again new person come. Although taking care, same way, meal or some because of the teaching or games like that. But we are living human being. So because of trust, friendship based on trust. The new person every time is change.
Yes.
Very harmful. So I think perhaps our life almost become like mechanized life. That I think we need some pay more attention. Of course, we must use these the technology, these things, very wonderful. But at the same time, we should not neglect about real, basic human love, affection, and relation on that basis is, I think, very essential.
I'm going to ask you to wait a moment because it would be very interesting with your expertise to comment about this issue of changing people in the lives of children and what effect it has. But before, I'd just like to bring in Yassmin. I should have told you, Your Holiness, that Yassmin is an engineer by training. So this mechanistic world is partly what she makes. And she's a great user of technology and iPads. So how do you feel about the possibility that that world of things and systems and technology, which many people here, I think, might be tweeting now, thinking about, could be getting in the way of relationships? Is that your experience or not?
I am a mechanical engineer by trade, and I'm also a tweeter and a blogger, and I'm a prolific user of technology. But I don't think technology in any way replaces human connection. And it's interesting to talk about community because I was born in Sudan and I have Egyptian parents. And so even though I was brought up in Australia, my parents were very, placed a lot of importance on family and on community. And I mean, I wasn't allowed to have a mobile phone until I was in grade 12, you know, and so I was 16.
How did you cope?
I didn't, I know it was terrible. I'm sorry.
You might have to speak just slightly more slowly.
But I think the fact that my parents chose to focus on community for a very long time and to focus on family meant that the importance of human connection was something that I valued. And although I will stay in contact with a lot of my friends over my phone and over the internet, nothing replaces having coffee with friends, and nothing replaces being able to hug my mother. And so I think that just because technology exists does not mean it replaces connection, and does not mean it replaces the teacher. There's a question about whether young people should go to universities, for example, or if we can learn everything from the internet. But I think there's always going to be a place for people to come together to learn and to discuss and to, I mean, we could have this forum online, but we wouldn't have nearly the same amount of discussion and the same amount of, I guess, growing from one another that we could in a face-to-face conversation.
So you think we can have both things? What do you think, that you can have the technology and the relationships and community sitting together like this?
That's impossible. That's very possible. But that's why it's really worthwhile make attempt or more research work. See, we cannot abandon these because of the natural sort of these values. So long we are human being with emotion. The other hand, the technology, this modern sort of the facilities, useful. We cannot sort of we cannot go to I think at least maybe 2-century-old way of life. That's, of course, I think the reality also, I think that's very foolish. The modern facility, very, very helpful, very useful. At the same time, we should not forget this basic our value. Now, say, not only myself, but number of scientists, brain specialists, brain scientists, and medical scientists, and also educationists, and social workers. Since last several years, and those scientists and also educationists, they actually carry some experiment in America, a few universities, like Wisconsin University, Emilia University, Stanford University. They actually, now last few years, they actually, they experiment. There's some sort of education about inner value. They found significant sort of change after even 3 weeks training. So now the only possibility, the only way is in the education field, as I mentioned earlier. The education field is we must include these basic values, human values, is something very important, and the whole our life, these values are immensely beneficial, benefit. So, through education. Now here, I always telling in modern secular education field, and also the multi-religious society, this ethics, if based on religious sort of ethics, then create more difficulties. Multi-society, and multi-religious society, difficult. Because this education is for everyone. The religion is for certain sections of the people, like Christianity for Christian, Islam for Muslim, the Hinduism for Hindus, like that, and Buddhism for Buddhist. So, different religious tradition never be universal. I think the content of the religion, of course, universal. Love, compassion, forgiveness, tolerance, self-discipline. These are universal. But you see, in order to promote these values, different religions use different philosophical views, then become different. Basically, see, two categories. One category believes, they use the concept of creator. Another group not use the concept of creator, but law of causality, or concept of sort of say, believe action. Action brings result. So more emphasis on action, like that. The theistic religion emphasis more on faith, like that. So there's differences. Therefore, the secular education field, the moral ethics, if we introduce because of secular education field, we must find a way of approach about moral ethics based on secular basis. So now that I notice India last almost 3,000 years, the concept of secular there. Secular does not mean disrespect religion. Some of my friends in the West, you see, they feel secular is a little bit sort of negative towards religion, or because of no religion, that kind of thing. No. According to Indian understand, secular respect all religions and also respect non-believer. So modern India's constitution itself based on secularism. So there's not at all some negative towards religion. So that's according Indian understanding about secularism. That I think very fit secular ethics based on secular ethics through secular way of approach. That we can introduce in modern secular education field.
So we have two things we've considered as essential foundations for growing good people in a good society. One is the stability of relationships for children. The second is the availability of a secular ethical framework for young people to learn in school, understood as being neutral in relation to all religions, not hostile to religion, but neutral and equally open to people of all faiths and no faith. Now, let me ask if we can go back one step to the first of those foundations.
Now,
Yeah?
I think I want to make clear.
Clear, yeah.
Actually, all major religious tradition based on secular ethics. Secular ethics itself based on biological factor. It's a universal. All major religious tradition, there's talks as I mentioned earlier, love, compassion, forgiveness, tolerance, these things, is, see, biologically, as I mentioned it before, biologically, see, we already equipped. These are very useful. So therefore, mainly I think love or affection, these are key factors. Now some kind of defender or practice of love and compassion, tolerance and forgiveness. These are defending your practice of love and compassion. Because some create some trouble, usually anger comes, no longer compassion or affection. Now for that particular sort of case, now various divisions teach us important practice of tolerance and importance of forgiveness. So actually meant for, because of the protect your main practice of love, compassion, like that. So now here, all major religious tradition actually based on these basic human values. Now secular ethics simply, you see, those basic human values. Now the problem, as I mentioned earlier, is at a young age, these are something very relevant. The children sort of play, children's proper develop physical as well as mind. Then join school where now no talk, no sort of education or introduce about importance of these inner value. Then grown up, year by year, then these values, the students' day-to-day life, not much sort of direct relevant. So therefore they dormant. And then other hand, see, the education, brain development, year by year, even month by month, grow. Then more attraction about external, the material values, and as I mentioned earlier, the whole society think just me, self. So, because you see because now in education field, not clearly sort of educate these inner values, something relevant, our happy life. So now in education field, young age, these are very much alive, very relevant. Now grown up, now education must reminds these values are crucial sort of factor for happy life, healthy mind, healthy body through education. Then someone, you see, on the basis of secular sort of ethics education, then various religious tradition add on that. It's marvelous, very good. Since you see all these secular ethics are basis of all different religious tradition, no contradiction. So, otherwise, now frankly speaking, I quite often you see that sort of expressing among the religious people, I think including myself, teach compassion, but sometimes I myself sometimes lost temper.
No.
But of course, as a sort of practitioner, I always look, anger is negative. I should not sort of let anger, even anger occasionally is developed. Immediately I feel this is wrong. So never remain some kind of ill feeling. So now my point is even religious people who speak religion, but not very serious.
We've noticed on occasions.
So these are lack of conviction, these basic values So if we, in education field, this is some sort of education about these values there, then religion also become more kasoda. I mean, then person who already have sort of what's the full sort of awareness, this value, then religion further sort of strengthening these values. Then that person, religious person, become very sincere, serious religious follower or believer. Otherwise, religion also sometimes become like business. Use religion for own pocket.
Deborah, can I ask you to respond to this? Yeah.
No, just I.
Yeah.
No, yes, no.
I must ask. So, Deborah, do you want to respond to these ideas?
One of the things that I'm very interested in when you speak, Your Holiness, about the values, and you talk about values and compassion and love and some of those basic ideals. I listened to an interview that you did with the funny Russell Brand some time ago, and you spoke...
I see.
And you spoke of your own childhood and going into the monastery.
Yes.
Going into the monastery, and as a mother myself, and I think about the values I have and the compassion I have for my own children, but also as an early childhood educator. And I wondered about a boy who was 8 years of age, yourself as a child, listening to people going past your window who were laughing and engaging in conversation, and you were listening to your tutor all day you spoke with your hands under your legs, but you were listening to life going past. If you speak about values and compassion, I felt great compassion for you as an 8-year-old child away from what I would consider life. I wonder if you can help me understand how it is possible for such a young child to respond to the life that you had, when I would feel great angst as a parent of an 8-year-old child in that situation.
Yes, some people, you see, a little bit sort of curious. I think theoretically, age 5, I separated from my family, from my mother. But I think mentally, my mother remained very close. And quite often, my mother, she came to see me. And also, you see, my father, every day, from their own sort of official residence, a little distance, you see, my father always used to come morning with his rosary and came to see me briefly. I doubt my father really loves horse. So the Dalai Lama's courtyard, there one area is a horse, you see, kept there. So my father, I think the main purpose visit, you see, my area is to see horse rather than Dalai Lama. So in any way, you see, practical level is quite sort of close. Then I think most important, those sort of people who look after me, although you see age, big differences, but including sweeper, they play equally like a child. You see, and of course, a formal meeting or ceremony, you see, I sit on sort of higher seat. So you see, they show respect. But then, when we play, they do not consider me as a Dalai Lama, but they simply, you see, play with me. Sometimes they often defeat me, so sometimes I cry. So these, you see, really, these sweepers, really innocent, very honest, very affectionate. So I grown up that kind of atmosphere. So my sort of real family, they theoretically you see, separate, but daily mixing with these people, really wonderful. So I can talk whatever I feel. These innocent sweepers, they are very honest when we discuss. You see, they brought all news from the town, on criticism about regent, about my own tutor, about these the ministers or some officials. They always criticize, or they brought all gossips from the street. When I ask officials certain things, then they say they are rather cautious. So they say, oh, okay, very good, wonderful. These sweepers, they really told me frankly all these criticism. So I developed wonderful sort of human relations with these people. Play with them like that. So that, I think, my case. So I've grown up that way. And then gradually, of course, I think age 13, then serious study start. Till that study, I have no interest, no enthusiasm, only play. When I used to sit with my tutor, at that time, you see, then very young age, you see, just to memorize, you see, these important sort of text. So once you memorize quite well, then no need thinking, right? The memorize automatically come. Then my thought go outside to play. Then around 12, 13 years, then more serious sort of study started. And then gradually, of course, around 15, 16-year-old, then really genuine interest about practice. So I think my own case, very young age, the biological factors, these are very much alive. Then grown up, time about now these diminishing. Then they study about these inner value come. So the biological factors or also the values, then combined with brain, education, knowledge, then it become steady, like that. So therefore, from my own experience, little experience, I feel education, if include moral ethics, immense help to sustain these basic experience or basic values, experience of basic values.
Carla?
I want to comment your last wonderful sentences in terms of the importance of early years of life. Now neuroscience say more and more about the importance of these years, but each of us knows that our identity as human being started at that period of life. And also, we know very well that these 5-6 years of life are also important because ethics can start in those years. Values, but ethics can start. Values can grow with us only if we are not taught, but we live values. That means values. What is important, as you said, is to have a context at that age where you can practice, experiment values at that age. You have not to be taught to be good or to love, but you have to be loved and love others. That is, I think, the most important definition of a family, a community, a learning community, because I strongly believe that to learn is to love. So, starting from the early years of life, what we have to educate to is to learn to love life and to be educated. I love the idea that children can educate us and we can grow together.
Desiree, yes, there's no doubt. But now we can educate these ethics. Now, for example, the religious field, you see, use the different philosophical views to further strengthening these values. Say, it's God, creator. We all created by God. So God, when we described infinite love, so that use that sort of what's the concept to further strengthening the value of love, like that. Then non-theistic religion, you see, use law of causality. That also. Now here, the secular ethics means, firstly, make sort of clear, make known map of emotion, of mind. Ancient Indian psychology, now a lot of detailed explanation about different kind of emotions. I think hundreds sort of identified sort of emotions. Now some modern scientists like Paul Ekman, as a sort of his sort of study, the facial, he identified, I think, 14 or 15 different sort of emotions, like that. You see, I think according Indian ancient sort of psychology, there are a lot of explanation about mind, about emotion. Buddhists as well. And then once we know, we have some knowledge about the map of the emotion, then we can, according our own sort of experience, we can identify this emotion. Once developed, your peace of mind diminish, such as anger, hatred, or jealousy. Once this emotion or compassion, affection develop, then no room, some kind of want to attack, want to bully. And you yourself, you should get more inner strength, self-confidence. So identify. Then such destructive emotion not automatically come, but due to certain causes and conditions. Again, you see, explain these conditions, these causes of causes will produce such emotion. Then the contradictory nature of this emotion. Loving kindness, very close sort of feeling. Hatred, distance. Or even want something bad on that person. So therefore, you see, once you see, like sort of the cold, because of the coldness and or hotness, you see, they can remain together long period. Other one increase, other one automatically reduce. So in the world of emotion, one emotion, loving kindness, affection increase, hatred, anger reduce. Anger increase, that reduce. To same person, love, anger cannot go together at the same time. These are the nature of emotion, nature of the mind. So there are sufficient sort of things to educate, to learn. Then that also is I think because of the different levels, so we can expand these things. So the problem I notice, you see, these remain in those so the spiritual sort of text, Hindu text and Buddhist text. So people usually say these are part of the religion. Now that's a mistake. So these are common for everybody, just to knowledge. So now last 3-4 years, we start to take these things separately, not religion, separately, just for academic subject. So now that's the way to educate. So itself, academic subject. I usually call for physical health. We actually see teaching or educate hygiene, how to take hygiene of the body. Now similarly, hygiene of emotion, same. So in order to know, take care about body, the virus or germs and these different things, you see, there are a lot of things to study. So similarly, hygiene of mind, emotion, also there are a lot of things to study, to introduce. So I think this can be, I think, one important sort of academic subject. Whether people, you see, really implement or not, that's up to individual. But worthwhile to introduce these things about world of the mind, world of the emotion. Then that now use method to strengthening, like religious faith.